All right, hello everyone. My name is Disc, and in this video we have a 25 Halls of Infusion. We are Tyrannical, Afflicted, and Bolstering. So I know this is a recent video on my channel, but I thought I would give it a refresh. We've had quite a bit of change. My viewer lesson this week is also a Halls of Infusion, so I thought a glimpse into how I play it might be good for them as well. And the group comp here is actually quite a bit different than my last video. I am a solo priest this time, which makes it quite a bit harder. Whereas the last video we had a shadow priest. But anyway, let's quickly talk about talents. So let's do priest side first. We have to bank a lot of points in our dispels this week. So for Halls of Infusion, we need improved mass. For Afflicted, we also need our improved dispel. Personally, I don't like sacrificing Bulwark. It's kind of like our cheat death. I do not run the Spore Cloak, so this is what I take. Also, Crystalline Reflection synergizes really well with our shields over there. I also don't like sacrificing Body and Soul. Arguably, I could have put that to Throes of Pain. That is what I did here. And then on the Discipline side, I actually ran this key with this build, but halfway through I noticed I accidentally dropped Bright Pupil. So this is the one dungeon on Tyrannical, probably even on Fortified, where I don't recommend dropping Bright Pupil. We really want to bank defensive, and I think what I should have done is had my Pain and Suffering up here. Also a point I don't like to sacrifice, but it is kind of my flex point. Also personally, I like Long Schism, so Shadow Covenant is our strongest window, and this just kind of empowers it a little bit more. Conversely, I know people might rather take TE. It's just not a playstyle I'm going for. But then we have Long Rapture and Aegis build. So, and then I want to try and get in good habit of this, but before I start my keys, I want to flash the meters to talk about it first so that we know what we're about to see. And this is a really common spread for me. I see it just about every single time, every dungeon, every week. Our atonement should be like this, way far out in front. That is because we are relying on our DPS spells. So I think one correlation that's really important to make here is the spells that drive our atonement are our DPS spells. So we go into Shadow Covenant, it is a healing window, but it's driven by attacks. So we really have to become comfortable with playing our spells, set our Shadow Covenants up properly with the right type of atonements to allow us to DPS. And then, midway on the latter side of Shadow Covenant, hit your Radiance. And yeah. So anyway, then we have improved Rapture in our book this week. So shields are doing great. It's right around 20 million. Our Aegis was right around 10 million. So off the top, almost 30 million damage, didn't even land. But then Radiance is right here. Might have been higher, or might have even been second if I had improved Radiance. But very thankful that we got through this key without it, especially that Frost Boss. And then I might have said to a couple of my students recently, I might have said something that I thought was different, but I thought my flash heal was always higher. It actually looks like it isn't. So I don't know. If I've given you any notes about flash heal, take it with a grain of salt, I guess, at this point. But then I also like looking at my CR, which is 2 million. And I think that is great. And we can really push this number, although it may be small, we can push this number by maximizing our Rapture with Grid 2. And it's just so pro, if you ask me, when you can turn this defensive heal into an offensive attack. So I think that is just really cool. And then let's look at DPS. So this is the fun one. And this is a lot like just monitoring our HPS as well. We really have to have these spells in the right priority and the right ratio to really maximize our spec and get the most out of it. And maybe to take that one step further, when we're trying to get most out of our spec, it's pumping DPS and HPS. So this meter right here, really important to us. And what I'm noticing when I'm teaching other disc players is I always see my number 1 and 2 it depends on the dungeon, but Nova and Purge, I always see those way in front of the rest. And, to take that a little further, I think my shadow spells, I'm playing these really close to optimally, and they're still far behind my number 1 and 2. So this little mini game of Purge the Wicked is so important. We can use penance to our advantage, but this is also where our expiation comes in. So we want to be taking advantage of expiation as much as we can, which kind of just challenges our dot game. But then, really important to note, my Mind Blast is first, way above death. My Dark Reprimand is, oh shit, we can't see it, but let's just say like 8 million. And then my penance is 3. So my Dark Reprimand is over twice as valuable as my penance. I've seen my last 2 lessons, my students had their Dark Reprimand under their penance. So we really have to give a strong priority in our Shadow Covenant window to getting 2 of these that are both procced. And that is really just what you want to do. Usually you don't see Divine Star up here, but this is just such an AoE heavy dungeon. And then, so I think this is a pretty typical 1, 2, 3, 4. Mind Blast, Dark Reprimand, Death, Expiation last. And then that is our DPS. So you'll probably see it on my screen now and you're wondering, what is this little guy right here? So I want to try adding this into my videos. And it's in the one we're about to watch. It's just on the right side of the screen. I don't think that's best. I think going down here is better, keeping it near my cast bar, my spells, my health bars, and generally just my mouse is in this area. So I talk about all the time that I do all of my work with my mouse. My keyboard only drives movement for the most part. I'm going to say 99%. Most of my work is done with the mouse. And I talk about it a lot, and I think I describe it well, but I think it's something, unless you fully understand it, it might be hard to grasp just based off me talking about it. So I spent like all day, to be honest, yesterday, customizing a little HUD to only show my mouse. So I have a 5-button mouse, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5-button mouse, and I have modifiers of Shift and Alt. So I thought to bring up WASD, Q, and E also, but I thought, if my tune is moving to the left, like you don't need to see that I'm pressing my Q, you know what I mean? So movement is kind of visible. I don't think seeing WASD really provides anything, but the more intricate, maybe unique or different part of my approach is I cast with my mouse. So for example, this is Flash Heal, this is Renew, so notice my shift is on, and then for life, change my modifier. My Radiance is middle click, my Purge is middle click. Let's see, Penance. Notice my Penance and Mind Blast are 4 and 5. Those are often sequences. So you're seeing things fire from here. I might be making things more confusing than necessary here, but let me know your thoughts on this. I think it might be nice for some people just to kind of see. And yeah, stay tuned for it in future videos where it's going to be below my player. In this video, it is on the right side of my screen. I don't think that's best, but we'll adjust it in the future. And then, I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. Let's go ahead and clip over to the key. All right. So here we go. Let's see what happens. I'm trying to get into a lot better habit of pre-potting. It's just one more button that we can offer to help the group. So yeah, pre-potting, potting every 5 minutes. And if you notice, some of these mobs are gray. Those are the ones I want to stay away from. They cleave. And then that was my fear bomb. So all of this trash, you definitely want to play your fear at least once per pull. You can interrupt the beams or the X-Pulse. There goes my first pot. It's like I'm trying to get dots out. My Harsh Discipline is ramped. Rhapsody is dropped. Yeah. So I don't have everyone dotted, but sometimes that just takes too long. You have to get a couple of out and just be okay with it. 2 large Dark Reprimand procs. Late paints up, that is fine. And my AoE spells just to polish these guys off. And yeah, so I noticed in teaching my students in the last couple weeks that it just really gave me a different perspective and maybe how to talk about Shadow Covenant. And if you're new to the spec, or maybe I have the wrong opinion as well, but it's just so important to focus on your DPS spells. That's why I prefer the long atonements. They give me a large window where I can just DPS. And yeah, your DPS is where you also get your healing. So 2 large Dark Reprimands, I think, is the biggest thing I'm noticing people miss. Mouse over macro for those guys. That is actually my only mouse over macro. There was a Rapture, did really good at maximizing that. Keeping active shields on everyone. And it looks like my Harsh Discipline was ready. Coming out of Rapture, I'm going into my Shadow Covenant. Out of Shadow Covenant, I put dots on the healthier people. And although I may want to just Holy Nova those groups, these groups need the healing, and Holy Nova is more of like a... Where's my Fear Bomb? Holy Nova is more of like a luxury type of spell. You can use it if you can, but if you need healing, it is not going to provide that. So yeah, Shadow Covenant in those groups, I still focus on my rotation, really trying to pump the healing, even though it might not be as much DPS. Okay, all dots are out. Harsh Discipline is ready. Full Atonement's in the group. Shadow Covenant. I made a mistake here. If anyone saw it. So my PI target is the Hunter. We are both strict 2 minutes, and our duration of our buff is 20, so it's like we're a perfect match. I did not PI him until right as his coordinated assault ended. So I totally missed it, and now we're off sync. That's probably the biggest problem. Yeah, I really hate it when I do that, but just totally missed it. And I think I do that a lot in the start of HOI. For some reason, I always struggle getting my second PI out. I don't know why. So right here, I know I need to get mana. We're going to have a break between combat. I'm very intentionally letting my Harsh Discipline hit a 3 and then hold. So a proc will fade in 30 seconds. A 3 stack don't fade like that. Yeah, and if you're a DPS, I think this is just a mistake right here, but you gotta kill the mobs. I can't drink. Okay, there we go. So I have a 3 stack. That is perfect. We have all of the mass dispels here. And to cover our first static surge, we want to line up Shadow Covenant with VE. So notice in party, I'm ramping long atonements. And then now that we're in Shadow Covenant, I'm just DPSing. Refreshing dot as necessary. Also dropped Rhapsody since we're all stacked. So when it comes to the second Dark Reprimand in our window, being that we have to move right there, I think it's kind of better just to forego your second Dark Reprimand and hold it for the move, because you will have a proc. Yep, second static surge is Rapture. Notice in party how I was refreshing shields as they dissipated, and even after the static surge, I was able to coat the party in one more round of shields, which covered the move. So I have PI. Okay, so this is Shadow Covenant with Shadow Fiend. Yep, so I have a proc. It downgraded from Dark Reprimand to Penance, but it's kind of nice to have that proc to assist the move. Yeah, this is a barrier. Really important, you want to lay it before the first tick. So I think in my lesson video this week, and it happens often just as a genuine like mistake or just a small error. But if you lay it after the first tick, I look at that as a little bit of loss. I try and lay it before the first tick. Right before the first tick. Pretty much only dispelling in party when there's a 2-stack. And I want to leave this phase ready to go for a Shadow Covenant. There's my PI. I honestly had a lot of loss since the last one with PI. Okay, everyone is fully atoned with Long Atonements, VE Shadow Covenant, and I'm only hitting my DPS spells. Now that we have Death, we're golden. So when it comes to defensives in Phase 2, you want to use them on the move. Defensives in Phase 1, you don't really need them. But that was my wall. Here's my second Rapture. Notice how I'm farming that darker blue value. That's where my absorbs are. I managed the full first attack. And now we're also ready and coded for the long move. And my personal defensive there was just a Pain Sup. And then now we have Shadow Covenant primed and ready. Long Atonements in group. Focusing on DPS spells. And boom. So, I think this place is so fun. It's probably my favorite dungeon. But especially on that boss, we get pretty much execute range for the full boss fight. And it's just so much healing. And this, I honestly trolled. I didn't mean to troll. I was trying to drink and I thought for the Evoker to be able to rescue me across, he had to be on my side. So I gripped him over. I truly don't know how it works. I didn't mean to troll him. But I just lost a lot of time for us. Yeah, the Druid said he might not have had line of sight, but I've had it before. I just thought they had to be on my side. That looked really bad. Sorry, Evoker, I mean it. Okay, so the play here is we Mind Soothe. It's pretty common. I see it actually these days. And we just sneak past. And I do have one change to my UI with these frogs. So I added them to my Fixate Weak Aura to very clearly tell which ones are on you. They have that little glow. So I want to get my Harsh Discipline to a 3. There is our PI on the Survival Hunter. Trying to just get ready for this window. We do want to run Shadow Covenant. I'm sorry, we do want to run Shadow Fiend since we have him. Dropping my AoE spells. Yeah, that was not my best Shadow Covenant, and it's because I was having to run from those damn frogs. I think I had a lot of loss there, but I didn't die. And my mouse over... Yikes, I forgot here too. That looked really cringe. Let the tanks go first here. But when it comes to that mouse over macro for Dispel, for the Afflicted, if anyone's wondering, I have that bound just to my middle click. So there's no modifier. I just hover my cursor and press my middle click. Pretty easy. Okay, so here's Shadow Covenant. Getting my Star and Rhapsody out. And I am pumping single target while we have this long Schism out. Got both Dark Reprimands there, both were procced. And yeah, so I try and ramp to a 3 on Harsh Discipline. And that's because my plan is once I'm in Shadow Covenant, my first spell is Mind Blast, which procs the Harsh Discipline. So Mind Blast first, Dark Reprimand second, and then your second proc will kind of just happen naturally. Let's see what I do here. We have dots out, and I'm going for green healing. We're in Shadow Covenant. If this were fortified, I probably would have used Rapture. Spread my dot there, and we're golden. So the way these guys work is I do track the timer of the ad spawn. We always want to play a star on the ads. I would also press penance when the ads come out to get that value off the spread. And then I try to just Holy Nova. So star early because there's travel time. I penance to put 2 dots out, 2 extra dots. And I just Holy Nova spam. Okay, so here comes our next... Yep, gotta be quick with those dispels. Here comes our next ad phase. We're not gonna have a dark star, but we have a star. Spread my dots. Star early for the travel time. And then I just Holy Nova. And for a phase like that, all I would do with my atonement is I flash heal the tank. And it puts a 15-second atonement on the 2 of us. And that's all we really need. Okay, Dark Star, that was good, but it looks like a lot of it missed. We know the spam. Got it where deaths are up? Ah, okay, yeah. So before boss right here, we also have a gap. Very intentionally, I have my Harsh Discipline set to a 3, because on pull, we have to go right into Shadow Covenant. And then also, since we're covering the first one with just green output, that is a great place to wall. So comes the first attack. Mind Blast, Dark Reprimand first. Have my wall out just to cover. Rhapsody for the troll. And here's where we have a little bit of a problem. The guy's enraged, but this next one is our Rapture. Notice where I'm farming these dark blue shield values and party. On Tyrannical weeks, Rapture is a cooldown for yourself and the DPS. You don't really need to worry about the tank unless you just like have an extra global. So my previous Rapture covered part of that attack. So we go into Shadow Covenant with no additional modifier. So we're still sitting on Shadow Fiend, it's just a Shadow Covenant. There's my Tendrils, Rhapsody for the Parse, and he is no longer mad. So in this little phase, we have a little bit of time to pump. What I'm thinking about is we have to get my Harsh Discipline ready, and we have to get Atonements ready. And then this is our Shadow Fiend. I also paints up myself. It's always nice to have yourself covered there. Yeah, I think on this fight, paints up is just a personal defensive for me. Star for the Parse. Rhapsody for the Parse. And we have about 10 seconds to breathe. Just pumping DPS. Rocking our Harsh Discipline, resetting long atonements in the group, and then now we have... Okay, yeah, we're going to Rapture. So we could have gone into Shadow Covenant just fine, but I think I wanted to play Rapture because our Pain Sup wasn't ready. Yeah, and then I went into another Shadow Covenant without a modifier because it was partially covered by the Rapture. I think now that we're in execute range, I hold spells. I forget. Let's actually see what I do. So ramping long atonements. Okay, barrier. Okay, execute was enough, but I think I'm going to try and put one more Shadow Covenant on him. Yep, with VE. Watching out for those frogs that are sparkling. Got my Rhapsody on them as well. Boom, dead dragon. So this is a change. We can't really skip it anymore. I forget if it was like that in my last video. So these are just straight up pulls. And when it comes to the deep chill coming from the dragon, oh yeah, this is when I notice I don't have Bright Pupil. So we want to precast our Mass Dispel. We don't really want it to be fully reactionary. Yeah, you want the buff to disappear just about as quickly as it comes out. And then very important, we want to put our Long Schism and all of our damage into the dragon. Notice that is when I'm attacking very intentionally. Before he had the Schism, his nameplate was Darker. That is the KUI nameplates helping guide my attacks. And then also notice on the dragon's nameplates, I have the timer of that deep chill. I've actually increased the number to make it a little bit more visible. But it's these group-wide attacks from trash that bigwigs won't show you. You kind of have to find a creative solution for that. And there is a wonderful weak aura that, yeah, I've talked about it in the past, but out of box it has every spell from every mob turned on. I think that is way overkill. When it comes to this pull, the only timer you need to see is that deep chill. So yep, that's it right there on the dragon's nameplate. And also, when it comes to Shadow Covenant, I've never said it before, and I think it's one of those things that, like, I might have taken for granted just because of how familiar I've become with the spec. But it's a very short cooldown. It's about the shortest we can get in WoW right now. It's only 30 seconds. You need 1 per pull, sometimes 2. Okay, so my opener, I dot, focus target on the dragon, give myself a single shield, recast a Mass Dispel, picked off one that missed, and Shadow Covenant, Long Schism on the dragon, trying to pump him down as much as possible. And also very intentionally with this pull, I'm not dropping VE, I'm not dropping Shadow Fiend, or nothing. We need all of that for the boss upcoming. She is a doozy, and I don't have Bright Pupil. Okay, so notice the dragon's about to pop off. I see that on his timer. It did not catch me off guard. I put that Mass Dispel central in the group, keeping an eye on my allies' positioning with party nameplates. And notice my Harsh Discipline, it is at a 3. That is very intentional. We want to go into this boss and be ready for our Shadow Covenant and VE, which we want to queue on pull. So Long Atonements in group. We are set for our DPS window. Schism, Shadow Covenant, Mind Blast, Dark Reprimand, working a Radiance as Atonements fall off. And then as we're exiting our first Shadow Covenant, this is our Rapture Q. I lead with a Flash Heal just to proc my damage reduction. And this is one of the rare occasions where I use PI for myself. So instead of worrying about tying it with the Hunter's cooldown, I reserve it for my Rapture and that synergy, mainly because I don't have Bright Pupil. And then coming out of our long Rapture, this is our second Shadow Covenant, where we also pair it with Shadow Fiend. Rhapsody while we're all stacked, same with Divine Star. You really want to try and use those spells when everyone's stacked, getting the double benefit. And this is a play I like a lot on this fight. I will paint up myself and flash heal others, getting the binding heals. And then here was our barrier, so I had a little bit of time to kill for my Shadow Covenant, but my Harsh Discipline was ready. I was just flash healing in that barrier and straight into my third Shadow Covenant where we don't have a modifier. And Shadow Covenant on this fight, you have to play it immediately when it comes back available. So in that interim in between, You really have to make sure your ramp is done properly, your harsh discipline is in the right place, the group is atoned, and then you run Shadow Covenant right as it comes available. And this is my second paints up on myself, just buying a little bit of time, flash healing the group, ramping my harsh discipline, and here is my fourth Shadow Covenant, which is paired with VE, so we are good. And we are almost to execute range, which is kind of like game over for this guy. 2 Dark Reprimands, very, very important. And here we have our execute range, which is all we need. I go into my second Rapture. This is also my second wall. And I wanted to play my execute before Rapture just to give it time to reset, so that coming out of Rapture, I am prepared for 2 more. Yeah, and it does look like I overlooked my last Shadow Covenant here. I just got carried away with that Rapture. But yeah, it looks like I could have had 1 more round of Shadow Covenant, so that kind of is a rip for my parse. But not a problem. And looking at the meters, that is right at 188,000 per second. Let's just call it 190. Yeah, I wonder, I'll have to watch it back and look, but that last Shadow Covenant, it looked like I had it available, I mean, at least long enough to get part of it. Rip. Okay, so not much here. I try and keep my camera at a downward angle to see those water attacks as they're coming. So we have a dragon. Definitely our focus target. Definitely want to precast a mass. That was really good. Except for the hunter. So not good in an Evoker group. When we lose a DPS, we lose like half of our muscle. But I do have PI. And I should have potted there. Kind of bad. So I'm just dropping PI because I know we have time for 1 more. So it's off of the Druid CD, but not a bad idea to still run it. Yep, so in my mind, if you have that weak R for tracking enemy attacks, if you have every single one turned on, it's too much information. And the one that you need to see, that deep chill, you kind of have to like search for it first. And I would just rather, whenever I can, just have 1 timer and know exactly what it is and have it easy to see. I never want to have to like look for a timer. Blame it on my dyslexia perhaps, but that just slows me down. Okay, so I think I get 1 Dark Reprimand, 1 Dark Star, and then I am just Holy Nova spamming. And it looks like that was also my Shadow Fiend. He's kind of one of those spells where I feel like you rarely need him. So I just like to put him on cooldown to make sure I get at least 1 more in this key. So now we have the mini boss. I open with Rapture. Notice on her nameplate we see the timer of the ending date. Being able to see that timer really helps you with timing your Rapture, because we want it to cover 2 attacks. So the first inundate was covered, and notice here the second is also covered. But we do want to pump the damage, so I go into my Shadow Covenant here. And one thing I try and always do when I'm outside of Rapture and have no externals, I at least try and shield myself, and that's what I did right there. You can always look at your 6-second shield as a mini personal, so you can always reserve that for yourself, and I think that's fine. Gave myself another single shield there. Getting my harsh discipline in place. The group is atoned. Dot is out. Schism, Shadow Covenant. And she should be dead now. Yeah, she's not too bad. I feel like the cadence is the same, even if it's fortified. You want to open with Rapture, use single shields on yourself. When you're pumping green healing, make sure you use defensives like a personal wall, Desperate Prayer. And that's just kind of how that goes. Alright, so the way this boss goes We want to fit 2 Shadow Covenants on each phase, and the only way you can do that is by pre-rapturing before pull. That way on pull, you can just go straight into your Shadow Covenant. And we should get 1 full one and at least a partial second. And also notice on the tank here, he gets this slam on his unit frame. We get the white dotted line. I think it is a really pro play to cast a shield when he gets knocked away, because I'm giving him that body and soul, which helps him reset and essentially protects the group. So if you notice what happened there, he kind of got stuck out for too long, and the melee hunter got smacked. But I think giving him that body and soul helped him out. Okay, so here's our second Shadow Covenant. Getting as much as I can. I pumped it right when it came available. And it looks like we got 1 full Shadow Covenant and like 3/4 of the other. So the first phase is shorter than the rest, so on the others you can get 2 full rounds. And again, the way the fight lines up, you want to pre-rapture before the boss spawns, and right when he spawns, Shadow Covenant his ass. Okay, so we do have Shadow Fiend up. I think I'm going to pair that with my next Shadow Covenant, and that is just for the DPS. And with these guys, it's really great to keep an eye on these inundate casts. Your Fear Bomb is great. I think we actually had a couple go off, which I wasn't really expecting with all the melee. But there was my interrupt, my Fear Bomb on the inundate. So again, another thing I'm thinking about is I want my Harsh Discipline procced or at a 3. And this wasn't good. So without full health bars, Rapture is not enough. Okay, so here's my Rapture right before spawn. Shadow Fiend's out, VE, Schism, and Shadow Covenant. Just pumping DPS. I find it's I think a better play of Rhapsody Holy Nova if you use it after you eat up all your dot. So that way it doesn't like take up time during your dot. Alright, so his second Tempest Fury, that is all I'm tracking with Bigwigs. I do Barrier, I have Long Atonements in group. My second Shadow Covenant is just coming available, and I pump. Okay, that was 1 full Shadow Covenant and like 70% of the second one. And the reason I have no problem playing a second Shadow Covenant right before Submerge is this run back itself takes it is longer than 30 seconds itself. So I mean, even by the time we finish the run back, it'll be reset. Okay, I think we have a lot of inundates here. Let's see if I stop any. Always nice when you have ads on boss. I kind of look at them as low-hanging fruit or something. Like they're really nice to get executes on. It's a nice way to get more damage and more healing. Yeah, and I've talked about it before, but notice how my bars, my nameplates shift white when in execute range. I just think that's the easiest way to see it. That's what I do. Okay, so as this guy's dying, I want to pre-rapture. My Harsh Discipline is ready. This isn't good. So see how a Rapture is not enough. Okay, so I work in a Radiance just for the help. A Flash Shield. Yeah, there we go. So I worked in 1 Flash Shield before the bomb to recover his health, to recover my health, and load my 10% damage reduction. Okay, tank got hit there. Had to give him a Dispel. I am pre-ramping for the attack. Shadow Covenant is ready. Harsh Discipline is ready. And boss down. So I really love this dungeon, and I think it was a pretty good example of seeing how to do it. If you're a solo priest, it makes it quite a bit more demanding on you, and that was for IO. So I thought just to post another one, and it might help my viewer lesson this week to see the same week, the same cycle of me doing it. It might just give one more outlet to just kind of check himself and look at things. But so if you're a solo priest in Halls of Infusion, it makes such a big difference to have a druid innervating you. And I did pass this druid my innervate weak aura, so if you noticed, pretty much every other rapture, he covered it with innervate, which was really, really good. And then I think I splashed the meters again if you want to see, but we kind of already talked about it and know what we're doing here. So Mind Blast always wants to be top. We're pretty much baseline getting twice as many Dark Reprimands as Penance, so that's why you want it on top. That is also buffed by my Long Schism, which I really, really like. And then Holy Nova, wow, it just did so much. And then I said it at the start of my key, but notice the difference between number 2 and 3. There's a pretty large gap, and that's what you want it to look like when you're maximizing your spells. And then really trying to focus on and maximize the mini game of Dot, using Penance to spread our Dot, pretty much always keeping our expiation spells on cooldown, getting the value there, and then kind of refreshing Dots as we need to when Penance isn't enough. But I think that was a really good example of this key, especially not running Bright Pupil. I would not recommend that, but as long as you are planning accordingly with your ramps, I think even on Frost Lady, we have a pretty good example there of how you can get through things and just modify on the fly, even if you're in the wrong talent build. So it's not something I do often, but I also thought that was a really nice creative play for me. When I noticed I was lacking healing in my build, I reserved PI for myself for once. And I think that is a fine play, especially when it's paired with Rapture and you have Grid 2 to maximize your cooldown. You just get so much more healing out of it. And yeah. So again, I'm trying to get going over on Metafy.gg. I'm really excited about that opportunity. If you would, if you've not yet, please go over there and vouch for me. It only takes a second and I would really appreciate it. Also, if you're interested in a viewer lesson, just make a comment in the comment section below, or you can check out my Patreon. I've been giving lessons to my patrons now, and that's been a good way to connect. But in the meantime, while I'm not on Metafy.gg, I've just been kind of conducting lessons on my own. So feel free to reach out to me. My contacts are readily available. And until next time, Disc.